Hey, how's it going? Previously, we've made an entire donut model purely from geometry nodes. We've made the donut body, the glazing, and a variety of sprinkles and toppings. Now our job is to make all the materials for it. So let's get to it. The way we assign a material to any part of our geometry is by using a setMaterial node. That way, any geometry that passes through here is going to be assigned the material in this field. The first thing is, I want to create a material for the donut. So I'll find where the geometry of the donut is, and I'm gonna place the setMaterial node right after it. However, we don't have any materials yet, so let's create some. I'm gonna go to the shading tab and I'm gonna click on new to create a new material. Let's call this Doughnut. I'll drag a new window down here so we can see the geometry node tree. Now in the setMaterial node, pick out the donut material. I'm gonna disable the glazing and the toppings so that we only see the donut. Okay. First thing is, I want to give it an orangey brown color, like so, but I want it to be a bit lighter in the center. Now, you remember we've already made a mask for the center in our geometry nodes. Over here in the center pinch, this is the mask that we've used to pinch in the center of the donut. In order for us to be able to use this in the shader, we need to store this map on the donut geometry as an attribute. For that, we can use the store named attribute node. Place this node here so that the geometry passes through it. Then connect this map to the value socket. Set the data type to float and the domain point is fine. Okay, now we just have to give it a name. I'll call this center pinch. Now in the shader editor, we can add an attribute node. And if we use the same name, center pinch, we'll get the same map. Alright. Now what we can do, if we use a mix color node, we can use this map as the factor to mix between two colors. And now we can use the same brown color, but the one that is in the center, I'll just make a little bit lighter. Like so. It works, but it's a little bit too perfect. I want to add a little bit of noise to this mask. So I'll add a noise texture. You notice this texture is a little bit stretched around the donut, and that's because of the way this texture is mapped on the geometry. We can use a texture coordinate node. By default, it uses these generated coordinates, but the one we want to use is the object. This is going to be a lot more consistent. Now let's increase the scale of the noise to somewhere around 20. Also, I'll make it max roughness. And now what we can do, we can use a math node And we can multiply this noise with our center pinch attribute. And there, we've created a noisy map. I'll just use a color ramp after this. That way we can dial in the values to create a better transition. So now this color looks a lot better. We're going to need some subsurface. Crank the weight up to the max. I'm going to use the random walk for skin option. And let's use max anisotropy. Okay. To give it a little bit more fine detail, we can use a bump node. This goes into the normal of the principled BSDF. We can use the same noise texture for the height. Then it's up to setting the strength to some low value until it kind of looks okay. This is supposed to give the impression of like crumbs on the surface of the donut. Alright, to give it the final touch, we're going to play with the roughness. The idea is, where there are cracks in the surface, there's going to be more oil from the cooking, so it's going to be shinier there. So we can use the same map that we've used for the cracks. This is here in the micro bumps. We've used this Voronoi texture to create the cracked map. And again, like before, let's store this as a named attribute. I'll call this Doughnut Bumps. Then in the shader, let's copy the attribute node and use the Doughnut Bumps attribute. We can control this map with another color ramp to dial in the contrast. This thing goes in the roughness. I'll use a map range to set values for the black and for the white parts of the map. The darks I'll set to around 0.2. The whites I'll set to around 0.6. These values correspond to the roughness setting. 0.2 is shiny, 0.6 is quite matte. We can change these values later if we need to. Alright, that should do it for the donut. Let's make a quick render to see how it looks. Looks alright. Maybe a bit too shiny. You can play around with the roughness map until you find something that you like. Alright, let's get to the glazing material. Let's turn it on. This right here is only the glazing geometry, so I'll just turn off the sprinkles. The process is similar like before. Add a set material node to the glazing geometry. Let's create a new material, glazing, and then assign the material. Now you can shade this any way you like. This is really supposed to be a geometry nodes tutorial, so I don't want to spend too much time on shading. So here is just a simple quick material. I'm going to use a mix color node. We're going to use a noise texture with object coordinates. And then what we can do is we can mix a color with this noise texture. But set the mix mode to overlay. That way the noise texture is going to give a slight variation to this color. And you can control how much from the factor slider. I'll give it subsurface. And also we can reuse this noise texture for the roughness. Again, like before, with a map range to set the values. And to break up the reflections a bit, let's use the bump map. And there it is. This should do it for the glazing. For the sprinkles, we're going to use a set material on each one, and then create a material for every type of sprinkle. The balls and the stars are really not that interesting. Just set the color and the roughness. You can make some metallic, it's up to you. The sticks are going to be a bit more interesting because we want to create several colors that are randomly distributed among the sprinkles. And I guess you can do this with the other sprinkles, but I'm just gonna show you with the sticks. What we want is to create a random value for each individual sprinkle. So inside of our geometry nodes, let's get into this stick sprinkles node group. And in the end here, I'm gonna store a new named attribute. Let's call this random color. This is going to be a float value. Okay, now in the beginning here, where we've created the points, I'm gonna capture a new attribute on these points. And this attribute is going to be a random value. The range of this random value is going to be between 0 and 1. Now this I will connect to the random color named attribute. And then in the material shader, if we use this random color attribute, we have each sprinkle a different shade of gray. To give it color, let's use a color ramp. Okay, then add a new flag to the color ramp and also set it to constant. Then it's up to picking some colors for each flag. I will pick up some vibrant colors here. They don't have to be 3, you can add another flag and have 4, or as many as you wish. and you can proceed to adjust this material the way you want it to be. I just wanted to show you how we can create the random colors. For the icing lines, it's business as usual. Add a set material node to the icing geometry, create a material, and assign it, and then adjust the material. And this is it really. The key points of this video was how to assign a material from geometry nodes, and also how we can create custom attributes that then we can use in the shader. In the next video, I'll show you how we can randomize our settings and actually create the generator that makes a random donut each time. That way we can basically create an infinite variations of this geometry. Okay, so see you there.